Like here's one from Quarks to Quasars page. Highest court rules you can't patent human genes.
From which highest court? Our court. We're live, by the way. You know, I just said fuck it and clicked live. I didn't even do an intro.
So well, do you want to do an intro real quick?
Yeah, let's do a fucking intro here. I have no intro ready. Let's do a motherfucking intro here. All right. Disclaimer, this show is not for the faint of heart or the easily offended. The views expressed here are that of the show hosts only, and not their wives, girlfriends, husbands, boyfriends, polygamous partners, employers, music artists, businesses, or anything other than the Cognitive Disillusions podcasters. The explicit tag is there for a good fucking reason. I'm really pissed off. Please proceed with caution. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Cognitive Disillusions podcast, where we address the current issues of today with brash humor, skepticism, or aggression, as provoked today by Google Hangouts being a little bitch. We take everyone's tightly held beliefs and my frustrated anger, as well as Joel's entertainment at my anger, wrap them up, smash them with current events, politics, religion, then throw them into the fires of skepticism. I can't fucking talk today. We're both sick and bitchy little fucks. So there is no green zone of safety today, as there's critical thinking completely out the goddamn window. This is episode number 2. I am Al, your host, and today with me is Joel. Thank you for showing up. We are your tormentors, and Google apparently torments the fuck out of me right now.
Well, I would just say that, you know, the only green zone seems to be running down the back of my throat from my nose. So love these Oregon fucking falls, man. They get me every time.
Oh, man. Yeah, it hit me hard as well today too. So you were saying about something about the high court, and this is going to be just a fucking live show. I don't even think I'm going to edit this bitch because I'm so fucking irritated right now. So what do you think?
Well, you know, why don't we can hit on some topics that we've been kind of putting off while recovering from our, you know, deadly colds. One of the things that has recently come up in the last week or so, again, is now in Oregon we're able to, anybody, regardless of having a medical condition or not, just I suppose for recreational use, can now buy marijuana from a dispensary store, and you know, this is kind of phase 2 of the legalization process, and you know, we're seeing a lot of dilemmas pop up now regarding employer-employee relationships or dynamics in regard to marijuana, cannabis, whatever your preference is to call it, and it brings up a lot of interesting, nuanced things to discuss as far as what rights employers have versus what rights employees have to consume a legal product on their own time.
Well, I mean, you're going to have back and forth there. I mean, it's still federally illegal, so a lot of the critical infrastructure businesses, such as courthouses, hospitals, police departments, state troopers especially, military personnel, are all still banned from using it regardless because it's a federal documentation, whereas local businesses are starting to adopt either policies completely banning it within work time, or becoming lenient by saying, you know, you can have so many parts per million in your blood, and then we consider you intoxicated just like with alcohol at a per liter volume. So It really depends.
Yeah, I don't know much about this as far as the testing capabilities now. I don't know if there's a way. I assume there would be on some level to gauge a person's particular level of intoxication, or whether they're sort of currently experiencing the effects of marijuana, or whether it's just in their system from previous use. So I don't really know much about that, and I know cops are certainly trained to tell if someone's high or not, but I don't know if there's a real scientific way of doing it, be it blood test or breathalyzer or whatever.
There is in the blood toxicity level, parts per million per body weight mass. So there is a way to detect that, and they've worked it out. I can't remember the exact numbers, so I'm not even going to quote them because I'll be full of shit. But they figured that approximately so many parts per million per exposure per body mass determines how intoxicated you are. So if you're a habitual user, your parts per million tolerance is going to be higher than somebody who occasionally smokes. You know what I mean?
Sure. Sounds like it could be as complicated to figure out as our fucking tax code at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's about as complicated as, alcohol intoxication. And they're starting to see similarities, sort of like with diabetes and alcohol. You'll pop hot for alcohol if you have diabetic reaction through the alcohol released in your exhale. If you're diabetic, same thing with certain other conditions with marijuana. You'll have a part per million chain of THC somehow. I'm still trying to learn about that, but I'm not really 100% sure. But like Washington, Colorado, if those businesses don't have contracts with the government, or state or federal governments, then they're starting to adapt policies of, we're against this, but, if you don't pop hot in a piss test, you're good. Or if it hasn't been within the last 24 hours, you're good.
Yeah.
So
it is probably safe to say at this point that despite its legalization here in the state, you're really still kind of playing a guessing game unless you inform yourself as to what can happen with your employer, because it sounds like they have all the rights they used to have. If they have some reason to test you, or some policy regarding drug testing, and they find what they found before, it sounds like they have all the rights that they did prior to the legalization to can you if they want to.
They still do. Just like with alcohol, and businesses such as like hospitals that are part of critical infrastructure that have federal regulations and guidelines like JACO, they absolutely cannot change their policies. And if a manager, say I go in to my manager and say, hey man, I smoke pot on occasion, my manager goes, it's not a big deal. And say I get in a car wreck at work, on the clock, even if it's a little fender bender, we have a piss test policy. So I go in there and do a piss test, and I smoked on the weekend. It's a zero tolerance automatic termination because of federal law.
Yeah. So
I still get canned for something that's completely legal in my state, but not federally legal.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're certainly, making headway, but I hope everybody is as aware, cognizant of their, employer's policy as you are. I know I had to find out where I work as far as what the policy was, and so I just encourage everybody else that might be listening to this, be knowledgeable. If you're going to smoke, if it's or whatever, consume cannabis in any way, be aware that just because it was legalized does not protect you from the policies of your employer. It just doesn't. So I'd hate to see somebody's life really get thrown into turmoil just by a lack of understanding.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating part is that there's always that leeway, and I support an employer's rights to determine what they want for their company.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword, because I always believe in freedom for the individual, but you also have to respect an employer's right to make the dictates for their company, because they've got their own brand, their own thing they're doing.
Yeah.
So
and this certainly doesn't fall under any kind of civil liberties issues yet. I mean, I guess what I was trying to say is that it doesn't fall under the Americans with Disability Act or the Anti-Discrimination Acts and things like that. It's not part of anything that's like that.
Actually, that's not true.
Oh, okay.
There is an exception for individuals who practice religions that use it. Currently, Native Americans are the only ones currently legally protected, other than I think Hindus. Hindus are protected by it, but only during certain ceremonies. So, oh God, I don't want to quote the ceremony, the Native American rituals.
Don't worry. Hinduism is weird, so folks, just don't.
Yeah, don't. I like that.
I kind of like the Native American stuff, though. I mean, it's spooky and, of course, bullshit, but at least it's kind of has its own kind of brand of honesty, it seems like. Kind of like Buddhism, in a way.
I don't know how to take that. Not really sure. I guess we could go talk to the 2 Indians that are still alive and maybe ask them what their opinion on it, but first you got to find the fuckers. So wow, that was really racist, wasn't it?
Well, yeah.
So don't judge me on that opinion alone.
I can say that you're not a racist. I can vouch for you, brother. In general.
I don't think that's going to save me. That's not going to go over very well.
So I take it, are you related naturally to them?
No, I'm not biologically related to either one of them. No. So that just went totally down the wrong path. We're going to edit that out, I think.
That's cool. I understand. All right. Well, so I'm not sure.
So I'm
how to lead off on this.
I'm looking at your new picture, by the way, which I've now put on the screen. I have OCD and ADD, so everything has to be perfect, but not for very long.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. You could probably add a few more acronyms to that list too. I'm an interesting individual. I think most people will vouch for that. Love me or hate me, I'm not boring.
Oh, true story. True story. I've certainly enjoyed our friendship. Fuck.
Right on. I agree.
So there's really no topics currently. I know we had a list of topics that we were going to do, and I know there was a few subjects you wanted not to broach for reasons that I fully understand. So I really don't know where to go with this podcast.
Can I make a suggestion? I wouldn't mind you and I did mention this a while ago, that I really do think it would be an interesting conversation for you and I to talk about guns.
Okay.
To talk about the Second Amendment. To talk about the things going on in the world as it relates to guns, gun violence, gun ownership, responsible ownership. Unpack a lot of that stuff and really, really try to get away from any of our own rhetoric and analyze it anyways.
Fuck it, let's roll with it if you're comfortable with it.
I am.
All right, shoot. What do you got?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing that just
no
to
pun
kind of
intended, by the way.
The first thing that I think is important in a conversation like this is to just kind of lay the groundwork of where we're starting. Okay, I can say for myself, I don't own any weapons, guns of any kind. I never really was particularly fascinated, like many of my friends are, by them. They're cool. They're expensive, so maybe that's part of why I didn't want to really get into it. But but I've never been anti-gun by any means, not in this new liberal sense. Just because I do value the Constitution, and while it certainly isn't flawless, hence the concept of amendments, it's still valuable, and it should be certainly revered and only changed if there's really a lot of evidence for it. And starting to think that might be the case, but I'm still trying to kind of unpack a lot of these emotions that I've had about recent events down in Southern Oregon, and just all the mass shootings. It does leave an indelible mark. I mean, if you count life for life, how many people have died in these kinds of scenarios compared to how many people die each day just getting to and from work. Obviously it doesn't compare, but there's something more to it. There's something that it does to us that somebody dying in a car accident doesn't. There's a trauma to it, a social human trauma that happens when we hear about this, and it brings in a lot of other things. So yeah, go ahead. I talked for a while there.
I would say let's step back and say that, at least agree that there is a social trauma that occurs with a car accident, especially if the driver of the opposing car is drunk. I've seen the social impact on people where a drunk driver kills somebody close to you. It spreads and it affects deeply, but the issue I see as a purely constitutional one, and that's the Second Amendment right was put in place by our forefathers of this country to ensure that the citizens remain free from a tyrannical government, which they were trying to escape from. And the American people as an armed people were meant to be a standing army of their own. And the intent of the constitutional amendment was to allow the citizens to have the same level of weaponry that the government was. So at any time the government became tyrannical, they could overthrow it and start over.
Or at least have a fighting chance, I suppose.
Correct. Now, a lot of people like to argue on the opposing side of firearms, and I don't know if this is where you stand, so I'm not trying to talk for you. I hear this argument a bunch currently the government's already restricted guns. They've restricted the weapons. They have drones. They have nukes. What's your M4 going to do? That's not the point. It's not a need. It's a right. And when you start stripping away rights, especially the Second Amendment allows for protections for the rest of the rights. I know that sounds like a soundbite argument that the pro-gun side says all the time, but it really does stand. And I've had to use my firearm to protect friends and family over the course of my life, even firearms that I didn't own at the time. So I have a very different view than most people, as well as my background in the military. I see that as a military veteran, as somebody who served, that my job was to defend those rights and protect the people from the government as well. So that's kind of where I start from.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that, because you bring up some really interesting points, and I genuinely believe that on both sides of these particular points regarding protecting the people from a tyrannical government, I believe that both sides have really good points. I guess I would question you in that if it was designed to protect us, if the Second Amendment, that is, was designed to protect us from a tyrannical government, that being the basic premise of it, then if we do have a government, I do think this is a legitimate argument that has weapons that are, unbelievably, the distance between, even an M5 or something like that. I don't know much about guns, bear with me. And, these Humvees with 50 cals mounted on them, just that little bit of a difference is pretty vast. And if you start adding in F-16s and things of that nature, you're not going to, with any kind of gun that you're now able to buy, you're not going to fend off a full-on attack from the government. I mean, I think that if that's the basis of the Second Amendment, is to protect you from the government, protect your family from the government, then it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense anymore.
I would disagree with you there.
Sure. I figured.
And the reason why is, to get a drone off the ground, you got to have people that will support that decision and fly the drones or drive the Humvees and the other personnel carriers. And you're not going to have that large of a support. In the military, the oath or affirmation of office and duty is to protect the citizens and the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to disobey any unlawful order or immoral order that will drastically harm or cause harm to the citizens. It's a duty to disregard those orders. So in our military, unlike other militaries, we actually have an obligation, not only written in our oath of affirmation, our affirmation of office, so to speak, service agreement, but it's also in the Uniform Code of Military Justice that says if this order is illegal, you are to disobey it. So we have multiple sets, and if you've got an entire military force being told, hey, you're going to go around and collect these citizens' guns, these citizens' firearms, and it's still constitutional right, you're going to have the majority of your military going, you know what, fuck you guys, our job is to protect them from you.
Well, let me throw out a different and sort of purposely more vague scenario. We have a situation where Commander-in-Chief says an order to go collect citizens, just collect citizens, just to put particular people, say, in camps, like what we did in World War II with the Japanese, or something along those lines. Let's not talk about maybe taking guns, just because I think it clouds the argument a little bit.
Okay.
So if we have that scenario, and if what you're kind of suggesting would happen, and that some significant portion of the military would realize that breaks their the vow or oath, I should say, that they've taken. So I'm assuming in that case they would then use the weaponry provided to them by the military against those other military people that are following this order. Is that kind of the scenario that that you're laying out? So in that case,
in World War II, you're talking about the internment camps of World War II. That was before the additions to the UCMJ that were specific orders that said, if it's an unlawful order, you don't do it.
Sure.
So that was prior to rules and regulations that were really enforced. So
I am just kind of getting at, like, if that happened today.
If that happened today?
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm getting at. Something like that, similar to that.
You would be hard-pressed, at least in my experience, and from talking to service members across all the branches, as well as the DIA, CIA, and all the other groups, you're going to be hard-pressed to find anybody that would be willing to follow that order.
So then wherein lies the fear for the average citizen? If they know that some portion of the military won't let the other portion of the military get out of hand, where do we need to have this protection, this just flux of weaponry among just everyday Joe, if we are going to have some portion of people backing us up?
Because
in the military.
Well, it's not just the military. Every citizen is actually considered part of the standing army of the U.S. Believe it or not, the average citizen in the Constitution and in the writings was part of the militia. So they are, granted we don't have the draft anymore, but if you remember back when we did have the draft, any citizen age 18 to, 42, was considered draftable or part of the military. We don't have the draft anymore. We have a volunteer standing army, but every citizen should be trained, should have the skill set to handle the weapons, and be a deterrent.
So I don't mean to use this example in any other context other than what we're talking about specifically here, but it kind of, what you're reminding me, or what I'm reminded of when you say that, is something along the lines of Israel, where every citizen has to serve some certain amount of time in the military branch. Now, I'm not getting into how their tactics and how they do whatever it is they do over there. But it sounds like that you're maybe suggesting something along those lines?
No, absolutely not. I'm very much against a conscript army, in the sense that every citizen should be part of the military. No. Okay. One of the reasons why we are as strong a military as we are, and we are as effective as we are, is because we have a volunteer group that says, this is what I want to do with my life. And because you are stripped of some of your rights as a citizen when you join the military, and I'm very much against anybody being stripped of any of their rights, I don't believe that anybody should be forced to serve the government or serve in the military unless they so chose to do so. Okay,
but I feel like maybe we kind of got off of my actual initial question there.
Okay, did we bypass each other somehow?
A little bit, yeah, and that's okay.
Okay.
I mean,
what did I miss?
So basically, my premise here is that if the idea of the Second Amendment is so that we can have a militia that can reasonably, counter any kind of a tyrannical government takeover of some kind. But you're saying that in that case, if something substantial happened to where people in uniform, people in the military, could, based on their oath, choose not to, go through with that order, I still don't know why at that point it's reasonable to assume that, John Doe, who never served in the military, that's got a cache of weapons that he may or may not own legally, why are we depending on him to fight this battle? Like, I don't understand that.
Well, because you've also got privatized police forces in the United States. The only elected police or law enforcement in the entire country is actually only your county sheriff and your deputies under him. All other police departments, city police departments, state police departments, FBI, Those are all appointed officials, appointed positions. They're not elected. So they are duty bound, not by an oath of service to protect the people. They are appointed to do a job inside that government agency.
Okay.
So
I guess my question then would be, if a private agency like that decided to make some kind of military move to, like I was, just to kind of bring back my vague point earlier, collect some certain group or sect of people and intern them. Wouldn't the check then be our regular military, or maybe other branches or something along those lines? Wouldn't that be a reasonable check?
No, because it takes a long time to mobilize a military. In the U.S., most military are disarmed, especially on bases. They're unarmed. They have no weapons actively on them. And the only people that are allowed to carry weapons on bases that are loaded and ready to fire are the military police on that base, or approved security services for that base, whereas police forces aren't. Average police forces are already armed, prepped, and ready to go. So it's the civilians' right to defend themselves. It's actually outlined in the Constitution. You have the right to defend yourself from unlawful searches, seizures, and arrests. And the prescribed defense in the Constitution for an unlawful arrest is the authorization of lethal force. Well, the only lethal force you're going to have against one firearm is another firearm. You know, the old adage, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. So the average citizen, their job is to defend themselves, and that's been upheld in the Supreme Court multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not questioning the legality. I guess I'm questioning the practicality of it. I feel like that there are a lot of checks and balances of people who are, armed, trained, and part of various services throughout our community that I would feel much more comfortable in general terms, having the kind of weapons that are concerning me, and really, I'm not just talking about assault rifles and stuff like that. I'm talking about just the ability to amass amounts of weapons.
Backtrack. The term assault rifle, there is no such thing as an assault rifle.
No, I know. I don't disagree with that either. I understand what you're saying when you say that. I mean, what I'm saying is that's not the kind of thing I'm worried about. I think that the fear tactic that's been used by the left to name weapons that way, ultimately, in my opinion, all weapons that are that shoot, I guess, I don't know a better way to that discharge projectiles at several times the speed of sound. Those are all can be used in an assault. So I guess by that very outside definition, all weapons are assault weapons in some capacity. But this way that people somehow go about amassing just sheer volume of weapons that can be used in things like we've experienced lately, without a whole lot in the way of barriers. I don't see that as being a reasonable thing to be in place to protect us from a tyrannical government.
Okay. So, what would you recommend, that we take away firearms from citizens?
Yeah, I don't know. Uh, you know, I don't know how to answer it, but I feel like we have to do something to find a way to the best of our ability to keep the weapons out of the hands of people that are going to be using them for fucked up shit. You know.
So we already have countries that have laws against firearms. France, UK, China has firearms laws against average citizens. And looking back on the years that they've had those restrictions, as well as Australia, you see an increase in violent crimes, increase in home invasions, assaults, and you see amongst ordinary citizens who don't have access to the firearms, increase in knife violence, stabbings, to the point where France right now is working on banning household knives with pointed tips. Now they're going to round tip blades. That's how ridiculous it gets. And
yeah, and the slippery slope argument, I can see some validity to it, but you know, at the same time, if you're going to ask yourself, is someone going to go in, you know, whatever it is, we're averaging 200 something mass shootings a year in the U.S. or something along those lines.
Define mass shooting for me. Are we going by the FBI standard of 6 people or more, or are we going by the
you know, honestly, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the cutoff is for the numbers that I've seen.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, even if it's let me just throw out a number, knowing full well that it's inaccurate. Even if it's, say, 50 a year, I can't imagine that if poof, all of a sudden the guns were gone and all we had were knives, that we're going to see that same level and of violence in that kind of regard, and then also the same amount of casualties.
Not right away, no. Yeah. The upswing took about 10 years in France. Took about 6 in England, and it took, I think it was like 13 in China. You know, I just like to picture the Chinese using fucking kung fu, beating the shit out of each other, but that's just, you know.
Dude, you're not making a good case for not being racist here. Oh, man.
No, I totally, I'm going to be editing the shit out of this episode here. Good catch.
I don't know. I kind of want to keep a raw version for my.
I don't know. Maybe we should keep it, and I just sound like a racist asshole all the time. But you know, I'm sick and on cold meds, and that's not an excuse. That's just an observation.
Right on.
But no, it's. I don't know. If I was going to say that, I'd say the French were making out the entire time. But you all know nobody likes kissing a fucking frog.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know. It's, you know, what was it, Hemingway that said there are lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics. So, you know, we can pull numbers, and I guess those things are important. You know, the numbers are ultimately important, but at the same time, just trying to use my imagination, I can't see that if you swap out a gun for a knife in any one instance, let me rephrase that. If you swap out a knife for a gun in almost any instance, the chances of a fatality are going to go down on some level. It's intuitive to me.
It's actually counterintuitive to think that. The people that are trained in firearms, if you strip away the rights for firearms. They're either going to make the firearms, or they're going to be more proficient in the weapons that they have access to. And criminals are going to be criminals regardless. All you're really doing is stripping a right away from good people and allowing it for the criminals. I mean, if removing the right to have something kept it from getting to criminals, they would have made heroin illegal a long time ago. Oh, wait, they already fucking did that.
Well, I mean, I understand. I certainly, that's not a new novel argument.
No, it's not. I totally stole it from some other asshole, but still.
I didn't mean it like that, but well, I mean, I think it's stuck around because there is some reason.
Look, it's like putting locks on your door. In my opinion, the locks are only there to keep honest people honest. Criminals are going to break in anyway.
It just seems.
I know it's cynical.
So nihilistic to me to think in those terms.
It is cynical, I do agree. But I work in a field where bad people do bad shit. Good people usually don't do that bad shit. And when they do and you catch them, they go, oh, you're right, I shouldn't have done that, I'm sorry. And then they don't do it again for the most part. It's the ones that are prone to do that behavior or have that mindset, they do it anyway.
Sure, but I also think that granted I'm not well educated on this topic, but all the stuff I've tried to find from as objective sources as I can, which is nearly impossible on this topic, but for the most part, the good guy with a gun argument is statistically irrelevant. It just doesn't happen on any kind of level compared to the amount of violence that we have. It's not a viable. I don't think it's a viable thing to rely on. It certainly doesn't. If that's the case, then it makes the argument moot.
I disagree, and I disagree on a constitutional level. To save myself from being a racist ass again, let's look at the 14th and 15th, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that were added for civil rights and equality. I mean, the argument that you're holding that, because these things don't occur, it shouldn't occur, and the counter argument would be the same as we didn't need the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment because they won't do bad stuff if bad stuff isn't available to them. And they did. They treated black Americans and women like shit because they could, until we provided protections under the law so that they could have the rights. If you didn't have firearms available, you're going to be restricting a constitutional right of a citizen. For what cause?
Well, if the benefit of people being armed is the good guy with a gun argument, and if indeed the statistics don't support that is actually something that's helpful in most cases, or any kind of statistically relevant amount of cases, maybe that's where the argument differs from the others, because the civil rights amendments have had an effect, and in the positive, in the moral arc towards justice. However, I don't see that the Second Amendment has had that same impact in I don't know how long.
Well, it's ensured the protection of those amendments when the individuals being protected by those weren't necessarily protected. In the South, those individuals, black Americans, more minority than the occasional white privileged motherfucker like me would have had, they had the ability to get those firearms and protect themselves from people that would have done them harm.
But for the most part, that battle was not done with weapons. That battle was done with protests and
and
a zeitgeist.
Every one of those protesters, for the most part, I mean, all of Martin Luther King's entourage were armed. Martin Luther King carried a .45, and he was against violence.
Do you think that it was that .45 in his pocket that kept? I mean, obviously, it didn't keep them from being beaten and hosed down with fire hoses and things of that nature. It wasn't a deterrent for the police forces and such, because they weren't going to use them.
It may not have been a deterrent, but it also gave them the courage to stand up where they may not have.
I don't know. That's too. I guess I'm not willing to take that leap with you. I think that.
That's fine. I don't expect you to agree with me on a lot of shit.
Good, but yeah, I think that people like Dr. King and all of those fighters back then, I think they would have done the same thing whether they had the ability to own a weapon or not. In fact, it sounds as though that please correct me if I'm wrong, because I certainly could be, but it seems reasonable to assume that based on the fact that they didn't have all the rights of a normal citizen, they probably didn't have the right to carry a firearm back then, so they were doing so illegally.
Yes, to some degree, yeah.
Yeah.
But if a law is immoral, unjust, isn't it your duty, your obligation to not follow that law?
I do think so, and I guess the concept that you throw out there that the .45 on his hip is what gave him the courage to actually stand up.
I'm not. Well, let me clarify that. I'm not claiming that the .45 specifically was the reason why he did have the courage. I'm not detracting anything from the good doctor in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying that the average citizen, so to speak, who may not have been willing to stand up with them, that ability to have that firearm may have been a motivating factor to go, you know what, I've got this with me. I feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more safe going up against what they viewed as a legion of, racist fuckheads, trying to prevent them from being treated like human beings.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of... Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it kind of brings up the slippery slope argument again, that... the one way to look at the slippery slope is obviously, illegalize or make guns illegal, and then people will start using knives, make knives dull, and people will start using bats and so on and so forth. But the flip side of that is if people can own guns, well, why can't they own drones? If drones with Hellfire missiles. Well, if they can own drones with Hellfire missiles, why can't they own B-2Bs and, Star Wars shit, or whatever's out there now?
Well, that's a slippery slope in the other direction.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So there's already an arbitrary line with the Second Amendment because it just talks specifically about guns, when the technology is so much more advanced than just guns. So the Second Amendment already is arbitrary, kind of unlike a lot of the other amendments that are really kind of more black and white situations.
Well, no, we had to expand the First Amendment to include computer technology.
That's true. That's true.
So if we're willing to expand the First Amendment to include computer technology and Scientology, then we should also be able to expand the Second Amendment to include the technology of the day, which is drones, nukes, etc. Granted, do I think it's responsible for somebody to own a nuke? Probably not. Should they have the right to? I would agree with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it seems subjective.
We're also expanding our understanding of equality to include the LGBTQ community, which previously we had not done that properly. So as we're expanding the rights to meet our understandings of the morals of today, we need to be doing that with the Second Amendment, but not restricting it, expanding it.
But why? I guess that's the question. Why? Why can't we have it, like one of the former Supreme Court, I can't remember his name, had, suggesting adding to the Second Amendment language that says, do you have the Second Amendment on hand, just to read it?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, yeah, I don't have everything's shut down over here. But basically, it says that in a militia, you have the right to form a militia, and then goes on to talk about guns. And he suggests that it should include while you're in as a part of an organized militia. So I'm having trouble finding fault in that. If we're ready to kind of concede that the Constitution, the amendments need to be updated to include things like the internet in First Amendment issues.
Second Amendment, the right to bear arms is not granted by the Constitution. Actually, that was a ruling. Hold on. Where is a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Interesting verbiage there. I mean, just from an academic point of view, the only thing that's really
and it doesn't say guns. It says arms. Arms was an all-inclusive term to include cannons, swords, explosives, incendiaries,
and presumably our actual arms as well.
Well, I hope so, and hopefully it's not just bear arms, because I would look weird with some bear arms on me.
Yeah. I think that was on Family Guy at one point.
No shit. I'll have to look that up later.
We talked about
That'll
that.
crack me the fuck up.
Why are they thinking this? So it was like a time machine thing or something. Of course we meant bear arms, and it shows like a stuffed bear's arms coming out. Hilarious.
That's fucking awesome.
I love Seth MacFarlane.
Oh, I do too. That dude's a badass.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that, and I know you would agree with this sentiment here, that sure would be nice if we could figure out a way to do more, to just stop citizen on citizen gun violence, violence in general, and I can't imagine a scenario in which more guns leads to less gun violence. It just is totally counterintuitive to me.
It may be counterintuitive, but every country that has more proliferation of firearms, hold on, excuse me, I had to mute it for a second there. Every country and culture that has expanded gun rights has less gun violence, and that's just documented. I mean, you can look that up anywhere.
Well, yeah, I would have to see that, because that's not what my research has turned up. So yeah, and again, it's how we measure these things and what gets added into column A and column B is.
Well, I usually use a ruler to measure things. That is, unless it's longer than 12 inches, then I use my dick.
Yeah. Well, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
So, all right. The fact that you said that just kind of tells me you're lying. But
the fact that I'm speaking should be proof that I'm lying in some way. I am a human, for crying out loud.
It's like the guy that tells everybody how much of a pimp he is. Well, you probably ain't getting nothing.
Oh no, I'm definitely getting nothing. I'm married.
Oh yeah, there's that.
That's just a reality right there. No, but I would agree that any reduction in violence towards other people would be great. But the fact that we are not only social animals, but we're also competitive social animals with a competitively social environment, you're not going to see a reduction in violence until our entire species gets to that point. And unfortunately, with religions, with politics, and with our natural need for, creating outgroups, you're just not going to see a reduction in violence. It just won't happen.
So ultimately, it is cynical or nihilistic. We are what we are. We just have to accept it.
No, we can make progress, certainly. But it's going to take a lot more than stripping away gun rights.
Oh, dude, I could not agree more. I'm not trying to make the argument that this is a unilateral or a one trick pony that we've got to implement.
In one hand, you have, and this is going to sound cliche and sound bitey, but you know what? Fuck it. I don't give a shit. I'm tired. You're going to have either peaceful slavery or you're going to have dangerous freedom. And I'm not willing to trade one for the other. I'm not willing to allow my people to be in an authoritarian environment just so they can be safe. I'd rather have the violence and the danger and have them have as much freedom as possible.
So then we don't have then by that logic we don't really have any room to evolve in that regard, because it sounds as though that you're saying that even if we all make the choice to maybe not own guns and not use them on each other, then in that scenario, being more peaceful, that we are then sort of slaves.
No, you're not going to have a scenario where everybody in the U.S. all at once agrees to give up their firearms. And since we are a constitutional republic, we're not a democracy. We have a democratic voting system. We are a constitutional republic. And a republic protects the individual. I don't like people using
that term either.
Yeah. A republic protects the rights of the individual from the mass. So as long as you have one person that says, it is my right to maintain this firearm, your attempt to strip it is a violation of that constitutional republic. And I stand against you. Period.
Yeah. But we can make progress on a societal level. I think that's possible. And I think maybe if we don't do this from a legal place or a forceful place, that I do think that the goal should be that we don't have firearms that are used to hurt each other in any way. I think that's what the goal should be.
How do you have firearms and not have firearms that hurt each other?
No, you don't. That's kind of my point.
Well, then, by that right, you'd have to strip all the firearms from all police and military at the same time.
Yeah. Well, no, not at the same time. I'm getting to the moral arc here.
Well, the moral arc is in natural human society's evolution. If you strip the weapons from the civilians first, the government now has unilateral control. unilateral control and unilateral efficiency and violence against its citizenry. So now you're going to have an authoritarian government like North Korea in a situation where the citizens can't rebel.
But are we? Because, I mean, you had mentioned earlier that because of the oath we take, not we, because I can't include myself in there, I was unable to enlist in the military due to health reasons, but if that's true, that, you know, if an order comes down from high and it violates the oath that every service person has taken, then again, they're going to be on the right side of that. So, I mean, aren't they? Or are they all going to, like you say, get in lockstep, like in tyrannical China, and, you know, take down the people and create that kind of a regime? I mean, what's going to happen in that case? I'm not asking you to look in a crystal ball. I'm putting that out there as almost a rhetorical question.
Well, I can understand the rhetoric there. And there's going to be some people that will lockstep, especially those with religious indoctrination as they grew up.
Yeah.
That are used to authoritarian top-down mentality. There's going to be some people that don't take their oath or understand their oath or their affirmation, whichever term you prefer, as seriously or as fully as I do. And not to say that I fully understand it either. I have a thorough thought process on what my affirmation was.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I mean, it's entirely circumstantial. It's entirely subjective at the end of the day to whatever circumstances in front of you. But, you know, I guess what I would like to see on a cultural, social level, worldwide, is just, I would like to see less of a fascination collectively with war and guns and like you say, sectarian attitudes. And, you know, I'm hoping that's the direction that we're heading. I mean, you know, it takes it going all the way up the food chain, and that does seem unlikely. But
well, as education increases across the board in all countries, as religion begins to die out faster than it is right now. I mean, obviously, religion's on the downfall. We all see that.
Would you say that we're, you know, kind of experiencing the death throes of religion? I know we're getting way far afield here.
I would.
But do you think that's what we're seeing now? That with the extremism, it's that sort of rebound, that pushback of the momentum being built up worldwide, to put more of a premium on critical thinking and humanitarianism.
I would say that the minute the internet got introduced to people and we were able to communicate across international lines,
that was the death knell.
Fact check things. That was the beginning of the end of religion, in my opinion. You know, it's a humble opinion of mine, but it's what I view. Because
I see what you're saying there, but in the same, it kind of just struck me that what you're also seeing now is just such a massive proliferation of bad information in the packaging of reputable sources now, that it's so hard to disseminate information.
That is a great thing, and here's why. And this is my kind of skewed viewpoint on that. I don't know if anybody else has ever brought this up, but the more things that you see on the internet, you know that it can't be trusted. So more people are going, well, you can't really believe what you read on the internet or see on TV. You got to check it out more. And more people are becoming more skeptical because of all the false bullshit, and they've got to search out what's actually true. So that's...
I hope so. I mean, I feel like that's happening with me. I'm far more cautious on the internet than I used to be. And, I don't expect that trend to do anything but become, more obvious.
Well, and with that, people are applying that in more areas of their life.
Yeah.
Religion, specifically.
Well, can we do it with our, more deeply, maybe any of our more deeply held beliefs? As far as, I wonder sometimes if, with a skeptical mind, if we, people that are, I don't want to say this like it's please understand I'm not saying this like it's a bad thing, okay? Not at this point, but people that are pro Second Amendment on some kind of more extreme level, okay? It seems weird to say that, but I think that it's clear that there are extremists in that
Inside
regard.
that is the air quotes that say, you are a fucking advocate for violence, dickhead. That's what you're saying to me. That's what I'm hearing.
No. What I'm asking, I didn't get a chance to actually ask the question, which was, are you able to, with that belief system, as far as just being pro Second Amendment, just that on its face, do you feel like you're able to objectively analyze that and examine it critically on any, or is it just a fundamental right and that's where it ends?
I'm able to objectively view it. I just haven't seen any arguments that convince me that we should move the other way yet.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there eventually won't be an argument for it. As we're moving towards a more global society, we're going to be starting to move away from nationalistic viewpoints. And more towards a United Nations of countries kind of thing, with the UN. So we'll start to have to develop rules and constitutions for that entity. And that's the point where I think those discussions are going to occur as we move towards that type of society. We haven't gotten there yet. We're getting closer. And at that point, the nationalistic controls of, the U.S. Constitution will become irrelevant. And other countries' rules on, their LGBTQ viewpoints will become irrelevant. And it'll be one of those, if you want to join this collective of humans, we're going to have to follow by rules that we can all agree on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or did I just ramble off into fucking nowhere?
No, I'm with you. Because, like you say, in that circumstance that seems to be, making some headway as far as more globalistic society where there are, even more rules that pertain to international dealings and such. We are going to have to reevaluate our thoughts on many issues and ultimately, figure out where the compromise is on a lot of these topics, such as you said, civil rights, what we call Second Amendment rights, gun rights, what have you, all of that stuff. So, hopefully that will lead to a critical examination and, public discourse that, again, leads us towards a less violent society.
Well, and, the UN has already tried to put regulations on countries by saying if you're part of the UN, you can't have citizens owning firearms other than a rifle or a shotgun. The U.S. specifically has rules in its constitution that say no other country's rules can supersede these.
Yeah. Yep.
So it protects the citizens right now. But if we want to make it as a species to a solar species, we're going to have to be a collective of humans, and some of those rules and some of those restrictions are going to have to go. But which ones, how much, that's for those generations to decide, not me.
Yeah. Well, switching gears here a little bit, you know, have you by chance seen the stand-up comedy? Well, first of all, do you know who Jim Jeffries is, the comedian?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah,
I listen to him quite a bit. He entertains the shit out of me.
he's fucking great. So he had a bit that talked about American Second Amendment stuff, and I'm not gonna even get close to nailing how funny he made this, so I'm not even gonna try. But basically, he said that, you know, at a certain point, it's time for Americans to really say what they think. That, you know, a big part of their fight for Second Amendment rights has nothing to do with protection. It's nothing to do with a tyrannical government. It's because they really fucking like guns and they like to shoot things. That they just like it. And I think that he has a good point there. Again, I think that we are fascinated on a societal level by guns and violence. It's in every aspect of our media and you know, literature and all of that. And I mean, how much of this pushback is just because, God damn it, I fucking like guns and you can't fucking take them away from me?
I don't think it's just the I like guns. We are, and I've said this to you before, we are a Spartan culture. We are a war people, an outlaw people. Always have been. Our culture of independence and individual rights creates a type of citizen who's willing to fight and who's willing to be free regardless of the restrictions on them. Hence why there was such a large push for civil rights, for LGBTQ rights, things like that. It's part of our cultural norm. It has nothing to do, I think, with firearms. It has to do with the American cultural aspect of you fight for what you want and don't listen to anybody who's going to restrict you from having it.
Well, but I don't think that the conversation should end there. I think
never said it should.
Yeah. I'm not saying you did, but I feel like that notion that that's just the best way to be. And I'm not necessarily saying that you said that, but I have loftier goals, I guess, than a warrior culture. I think that that's so basic, and it's as far down from social evolution as you can really be. The only thing more or less evolved than that, of course, is just strict tyranny.
I don't think you understand the warrior culture if that's your viewpoint.
I don't know. I think that I don't think fighting is always the best way to get shit done, to protect shit. I think that there's other. It depends on how you define the word fighting, but genuine discourse and just an understanding that people born, however they're born, have a basic right to just be who they are. If that's just the ground floor under which we say we'll not go below that, then everything else works out, can be worked out on its own through conversation.
I think there's a common misconception here that you're displaying in your misunderstanding of warrior culture. The warrior culture isn't fight, solve everything with violence. Because, and this is coming from warrior culture, nobody is adverse to fighting more than a warrior. We don't want it to ever get to that point because we're the ones that have to do it. We would rather see diplomatic solutions, talking, but the mentality is if there has to be a fight, if it has to get there, as much as we don't want it to be, we would rather be us going out there than our children, than our loved ones, seeing that battle. And the concept is very much I don't fight my enemy because I hate them. I fight my enemy because I love my family behind me. And that's the warrior culture. It's let's try to solve things peaceably. Let's try to get things accomplished diplomatically. But if you're not willing to do that, I'm willing to defend my family from you. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to attack you. It just means if you're ready to fight, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, but what you would have to attack in a way, because if what you're fighting for is something, keeping your family from whatever it might be that you're defending them from, you can't expect to do that from a defensive posture. Well, so basically,
you certainly can advance. I mean, that's part of combat, but
that's my point. It's ultimately
not the objective.
The conversation is under threat of violence. So we're having this conversation under duress. When you have that on the line, when you say that if this doesn't happen, I'm going to use violence. If that is on either party, if that's the stance that you hold, then what you're doing is you're already laying the groundwork for mistrust. All right? I mean, that's what I'm feeling. When you say that if you don't do this, I'm going to fucking kill you. In a sense, that's a really, really silly way of putting it, but just for my argument's sake, it's the simplest way I can put it. Then you're creating a situation of duress and not of critical thinking and discourse and diplomacy.
No, I think that's a mischaracterization of it. How can I put this so that it's understood in the way that it's intended? Think about it this way. All right, so World War II, America, for the most part, stayed the fuck out of it. Okay? They stayed out of it. And they were like, you know what? You guys want to fight? You do your thing. We're staying the fuck out of it. But we're willing to go. We're willing to fight if y'all won't solve it and you want to get us involved. And eventually the Japanese went, you know what? We're going to go after you anyway. Well, now you just picked a fight with me that I didn't want. Now I'm going to fight. And I'm fighting on both fronts. And I'm going to solve this shit. That's
I got to clear something up here. I have to clear something up here. I'm not suggesting at all that this idea, this sort of, in my opinion, more sophisticated way of dealing with problems, it takes both sides making this agreement that this is not going to digress to violence. It has to be equal on both sides. You can call that naive. I'm sure that that's not even an inaccurate statement this time in our society. But those are the things that I'm talking about getting to. About having a really important conversation that's not under duress. That's not under this cloud of imminent violence if it doesn't go one way or the other. So, yeah, I mean, that's, again, I know it's very pacifistic sort of point of view, but sure it'd be nice if we could get there.
Again, I think that's a mischaracterization of what's actually going on, and what the warrior culture really stands for. But I think we're having a communications barrier that I just can't find a way around.
No, I think that you're coming at things from a more practical place, and I'm coming at it from a more almost utopian kind of idealistic perspective. I think that if the fundamental thing to any way of working out a problem, if at any place in the working out of that problem there is a threat on either side of violence, then you're less likely to work out that problem without it getting to violence, but just in general, you're less likely to find a solution to that problem.
I would disagree, because at any time there's always the possibility of violence. It doesn't matter who you're speaking with or when.
Nonviolence is a choice, though, as well as violence is. It's ultimately a choice.
It is a choice, but there's a difference between having a passive conversation and a conversation where you feel secure. At any time you have a face-to-face conversation with anybody or a conversation over the telephone, if you feel there isn't a threat of violence, you're going to have a conversation a certain way. If you feel there's a threat of violence, you're going to have a conversation another way. But what most people don't understand is that at any time, you're having a conversation even with your best friend. There could be violence. You're just accepting that as a possibility, just like getting into a car. You know there's the possibility of you dying on your way to work. You accept that as a possibility. So to say that there's never a possibility of violence is just blatantly false. There's always that possibility. It's just the likelihood isn't going to occur. Same thing with diplomatic relations. At any time you send a diplomat, say, to Iran to have a conversation with the Iranian government, that diplomat could get killed in Iran just because the agreement they don't like the U.S.
Yeah, and that's because the agreement that I'm suggesting that would have to be made amongst all people involved isn't in place.
Well, you can't have that agreement with everybody in place because people are lying fucking creatures.
Well, hence the evolution. I mean, that's the direction I feel like we need to be going in, though. That's the end of the continuum.
I think we'll ever get there.
Well, it's probably true, but I feel like the warrior culture, even as you've laid it out as eloquently as you have, and I don't even disagree with you, it's further down the continuum than where I think we ought to be.
I don't know how I view that. I disagree.
Well, I know that. I know you disagree.
I see the warrior culture as a very diplomatic, very peaceful culture.
Well, I don't know. I have a hard time with that because, the concept of a warrior is one who participates in war. It is ultimately the threat of violence. when all else fails.
Yeah, but the intent of the warrior culture is not to get there. You know, it's like, God, I don't have an analogy right now off the top of my head. The medication.
I'm not sure that most. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't think that most people look at it the way you do, though. I think that you're. I think that you're definitely in a minority. As far as that goes.
Sweet, I'm in a minority now.
There you go. You can be racist now.
Wait, no, that doesn't mean I get to be racist just because I'm in a minority.
Oh, I thought it did.
That's fucking racist.
Well, I had to, balance the scales here a little bit.
Oh shit!
I'm a ginger, man. I'm an atheist ginger. Like, what could be worse than that? What could fucking be worse than that? I guess if I was gay.
Atheist ginger.
Yeah.
Well, what does gay have to do with it? Now we're just fucking bigoted prejudice right now. We just crossed every fucking line on this show. Jesus.
I didn't mean actually worse. Goddamn, you got me there. I didn't mean like worse on any kind of real level. I meant just how we're perceived in the world. Fuck. Touche.
I feel like we haven't covered enough inappropriate nature. I mean, do we need to throw in some Jew and black jokes now?
I don't know. Probably not. I think we're probably safe at this point.
Well,
how long have we been at this?
Geez. Fuck, I don't know. I stopped paying attention to the time a while ago.
I wonder. Will it show it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe if you tip her. What time did I send that text? We'll figure it out here. Just give me just 1 second. I sent that text at
I have a timer on there.
No, it doesn't. It's it's Google Hangouts. It doesn't have shit.
Apparently.
I sent it at 11:06. So we've been going 12. What? That's not right. 12:06. We can't be almost 2 hours in.
I think we're at least an hour and a half.
Seriously?
Yeah. Well, it's 12:53. I think we got started around 11:30.
I thought we got started. No, because I sent you the link for this. Oh, that's right. Because we did a half hour. You're right. So yeah, we've been going almost an hour and a half.
I don't think there's any chance people will want to listen to this whole thing.
Fuck. Maybe we might need to edit out all the racist shit to cut it down to an hour.
Have fun.
God damn.
Well, okay. Well, do you want to wrap this up on any kind of official level?
No. Let's leave it as a surprise and just tell people to fuck off.
All right, fuck off, people.
All right.
And don't